Russia's Burvestnik cruise missile, a nuclear-powered weapon designed to reach vast distances with devastating power, has recently captured the world's attention. Lauded by Russian officials as an unparalleled strategic asset, the missile's supposed ability to evade defense systems and remain virtually untouchable has been hyped as a major breakthrough in military technology. Yet, despite its promising claims, the missile has been embroiled in controversy, failure, and deadly consequences, casting a shadow over Russia's ambitious military endeavors. This video will take a closer look at the Burvestnik missile's development, its disastrous test flights, and the alarming consequences that have followed its pursuit, all while examining why this invincible weapon might be more of a liability than a victory for Russia. The birth of the Burvestnik missile. The origins of the Burvestnik missile, also known as the Skyfall in NATO circles, trace back to the Soviet era. Though initially conceived during the Cold War, the missile was revived in 2001 under the leadership of President Vladimir Putin. At the time, the Russian military sought to build a new class of missile capable of circumventing the defenses of Western powers, particularly the United States, and giving Russia a strategic advantage on the world stage. The Burvestnik missile is powered by a nuclear fission reactor and is believed to operate on a ramjet engine. In theory, this combination allows the missile to travel virtually indefinitely, bypassing the traditional limitations of fuel capacity that restrict conventional rockets. Once launched, the missile uses nuclear-powered propulsion to remain airborne for hours, potentially traveling across continents before striking its target. Its unpredictable flight path and long-range capabilities have made it an enticing weapon for those in the Kremlin, who see it as a game-changer in the world of strategic warfare. The promises and perils of nuclear propulsion. On paper, the Burvestnik seems like a formidable weapon. Its nuclear-powered propulsion means it can avoid interception by conventional missile defense systems, making it potentially unstoppable. It's designed to launch from any location and reach any target worldwide. Imagine a missile that could take off from a remote Russian airstrip, fly across the globe, and strike a target while evading all countermeasures. The strategic implications of such a weapon are profound. However, in the early 1950s, the United States tried to build something similar with disastrous results. Known as Project Pluto, the U.S. military sought to develop a nuclear-powered missile capable of traveling at high speeds and covering vast distances. Though tests were initially successful, the project was ultimately abandoned due to the overwhelming risks involved, including the environmental and safety hazards of using nuclear-powered propulsion in missile systems. The Burvestnik, despite its modern iteration, carries many of the same dangers that led the U.S. to scrap its plans. The nuclear-powered missile creates significant environmental risks, with unshielded reactors ejecting dangerous radioactive particles into the atmosphere during flight, as seen in the numerous failed tests. These concerns are not just theoretical, they've already had catastrophic real-world consequences. A legacy of failure and destruction. Since its revival, the Burvestnik missile has endured a string of failed test flights. In November 2017, a test launched from Russia's Punkovo test range ended in failure after the missile flew for just 2 minutes before crashing into the Barents Sea. This would not be the last of its mishaps. Many subsequent tests also ended in disaster, with missiles veering off course, their propulsion systems failing, and their nuclear reactors destabilizing. Each failure has released radioactive materials into the environment, poisoning local ecosystems and endangering surrounding populations. Perhaps the most disastrous incident occurred in August 2019 at the State Central Navy testing range near Nyonoksa on the White Sea. During an attempt to recover a submerged missile, a booster linked to the missile's nuclear core detonated, killing 5 technicians instantly. Several more fatalities occurred in the weeks following as radiation sickness set in among those exposed to the explosion. First responders and emergency personnel who were not informed about the nature of the nuclear accident were also affected, with many suffering from radiation exposure, leading to long-term health concerns. Despite these catastrophic events, Putin chose to push forward with the program, a decision that has been widely criticized both inside and outside of Russia. The government's attempts to cover up the full extent of the damage have only fueled suspicion about the true cost of developing such a dangerous weapon. Putin's invincible weapon, propaganda or reality? In March 2018, Putin unveiled the Burvestnik missile to the public in a grand speech, calling it a revolutionary weapon that could render all missile defense systems obsolete. He praised its long-range and evasive capabilities, declaring it to be invincible and a game-changing addition to Russia's nuclear arsenal. However, behind the scenes, the missile was far from ready. Its engines were still prone to failure, and testing had yet to prove its reliability. In fact, a year later, when Putin delivered a follow-up speech touting the missile's success, the weapon had yet to complete a full test flight without incident. Nevertheless, Putin persisted in promoting the missile's capabilities, using it as a symbol of Russia's military power and defiance against Western nations. The missile's description as a flying Chernobyl, as suggested by General Valery Gerasimov, the head of the Russian army, is telling. While the missile may be theoretically capable of long-range strikes, its extremely dangerous nuclear propulsion system makes it a disastrous gamble. The widespread environmental contamination, loss of life, and ongoing risks associated with the missile have led many experts to consider the Burvestnik less of a strategic asset and more of a dangerous folly, a weapon that no one else in the world would want. A dangerous stunt, not a strategic asset. Military experts around the world have voiced their concerns about the Burvestnik missile. Chuck Farrer, a former member of the U.S. Navy's SEAL Team 6, called it a Frankensteinian folly, a revival of an outdated and dangerous concept that the United States abandoned decades ago. According to experts, the missile's design is fundamentally flawed, as it is impossible to make such a weapon fully reliable or safe. If Russia continues its tests, it will likely face more catastrophic accidents and widespread radiation contamination. The missile has already had a toxic impact on the Arctic environment, with radioactive isotopes being spread over vast areas during failed tests. The notion of using a nuclear-powered missile as a strategic weapon is, at best, a misguided attempt to project power, and, at worst, a reckless endangerment of public health and global safety. Global reactions. While Russia continues to boast about its missile, the global response has been less than impressed. U.S. President Donald Trump, speaking aboard Air Force One, downplayed the missile's significance, reminding the world that the U.S. has more than enough nuclear firepower to deter any threat from Russia. He also pointed out the absurdity of Putin's boasting, given the ongoing failures of the Russian military in Ukraine, where Russia is struggling to make significant gains against a much smaller and less equipped adversary. For Trump, the Burvestnik is not a serious threat, but another example of Russia's desperate attempt to assert dominance on the world stage, despite its increasingly vulnerable position. The missile's disastrous track record, combined with Russia's ongoing military setbacks, only serves to highlight Putin's hubris and the flaws in his military strategies. A weapon with no future. The Burvestnik missile is a perfect example of how the pursuit of technological supremacy can blind a nation to its own limitations. Despite its promise, the missile has proven to be a failure in both design and execution. From its dangerous nuclear propulsion system to its catastrophic test failures and environmental impact, it has become a symbol of Russia's overreach and a costly reminder of the risks involved in weaponizing nuclear power. For Russia, the Burvestnik is more than just a military project. It's a symbol of national pride, a tool for projecting strength to the outside world. But in reality, it's a dangerous gamble that Russia can't afford to continue, especially in light of the mounting costs in lives and environmental damage. As global experts and military leaders have pointed out, the Burvestnik is not the strategic asset Putin imagines it to be. Rather, it is a dangerous stunt that could have disastrous consequences for Russia and the world. In the end, the Burvestnik's journey from a Soviet-era dream to a nuclear nightmare serves as a cautionary tale of the perils of nuclear weapons and the unchecked ambition of powerful leaders. It may be time for Russia to reconsider its priorities before this missile's next test flight leaves another toxic legacy in its wake. If you found this story about Russia's Burvestnik missile and its dangerous legacy as eye-opening as we did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth analyses of the world's most controversial military developments. Thanks for watching.